We're continuing our exploration of astrology as a mystical path. And we've already discussed the sun and the power and presence of the sun in one's life and how to develop that. The next step is to consider the moon, the feminine, lunar, passive qualities of our psyche, of our soul. And we remember that essentially all of the planets are a facet or an aspect of our very selves, and that the birth chart reflects and represents a little snapshot, a little section of time where the qualities, the energies, the powers of the planets are organized in a certain way. But since we're approaching this as a mystic path, we're trying to, or we're aiming to lift ourselves beyond time, space, and circumstance and get to the root, to the core of what these planets are, what the powers of the planets are, and how we can best cultivate them and manifest them. In a sense, it's like putting together our cosmic self in a harmonious fashion so that we're able to realize what our true nature really is in its wholeness, in its totality. Now, with the moon, this is very different than many people are used to. They don't really relate to the world with a lot of lunar qualities. Now, of course, women, more feminine individuals will have an easier time with this. But again, even in that case, oftentimes we have kind of a skewed understanding or a skewed idea of what the moon or what the lunar or feminine qualities are. Because these days we don't like to divide things up into polarities. We like to have triplicities and quadruplicities and so on. It just keeps going. But the basis of our human experience is that of a polarity. And there are certain things like the external world, which we have to be active in managing our external world, which is where the sun comes into play. That's also a manifestation of spirit too, so we're not making a judgment there. But there's also our internal world, which is ruled over by our dreams, our emotions, our feelings, our capacity for receptivity, our capacity for contentment. And all of these things relate to the moon. And in our culture as it is now, since we've just only recently come out of the Kali Yuga, or the Iron Age, which was dominated by masculine energies, we're now in an age where it is the feminine, which is most apparently being developed. Now, of course, we have quite a few centuries to go till we reach the apex of that. So there's going to be a little bit of muddling of both of these as we grow into it, just like as the sun starts to rise, there's a combination of darkness and light until we get to noon. But with the lunar path, with the development of our lunar qualities, what makes this so hard is that it requires attention on our inner world, which is not necessarily to be defined by what is going externally. When we think about life from a solar perspective or from the perspective of the sun, that is a quality and energy of doing, of building, of managing, of creating something within the world and finding a sense of fulfillment through that. That is why people with a stronger masculine energy, they feel better, and it's almost healing for them to go out and accomplish something, to do something, because then they're exhausted and they can look and say, yeah, that was wonderful, this is what I did, and they just go right to sleep, everything's good. That works well for men or people with very strong masculine energy. But when it comes to the feminine or the lunar side of things, that's not how healing occurs. It doesn't occur by doing more. It doesn't occur by achieving things. It doesn't occur by managing things better. It occurs by simply being able to exist in a state of receptivity. So that is why oftentimes you'll have women who they keep trying to achieve more. They want to achieve more in their job. They want a better home. They're driven. They want to experience more. And they wonder why at the end of the day or at the end of the month or at the end of the year, they still feel empty inside. because that's not how the feminine energy is fulfilled. The feminine energy is fulfilled by being able to have the safety around them to turn within and simply be, to simply exist, in a sense, beyond time and space. So if the solar portion of our nature is about doing, the lunar portion is about contentment, existing in that state of contentment. When we think about developing the moon is about, in a sense, the negative power. We have willpower, which is the sun, but we also have what's called won't power, which is the moon. The sun, in its manifestation, is driven to do things, to achieve things. But with the moon, to develop it is about learning to turn within and feel the inner core of the heart and recognize what it doesn't want. So if things come into a person's life and their moon is not well developed, they won't know what to say no to. And so things come into their life and poison their inner consciousness. The strength of the moon is about just pushing things away, saying no, and then being left with what comes after that. That is often why yoga practice and meditation can very much be a lunar type of path, because what an individual is doing, if they're doing it this way, is they're remaining centered within, and whatever comes up in their awareness, they know that that's not them. Whatever they can perceive, whatever they can see, whatever they experience, they know, well, that's not me. That's why many yogis, they practice a kind of mantra or type of affirmation where whatever arises, they say, not this, not this, I'm not this, I'm not this. And so after you go through all the stuff that you're not, your physical body, the people you surround yourself, your accomplishments, time, space, and so on, well, what's left? Well, what's left is pure being, pure being. And that is the true seat of contentment and fulfillment. Now again, this might be hard to fathom, even if you've been on a spiritual path, even if you've been a meditator, even if you've been a yogi, because even in those kinds of cultures, there is this emphasis on striving, achieving, doing, reaching the next state of nirvana, finding the next mantra, meeting the next guru. When really, when we can let go of everything and rest in that pure being, that's where true fulfillment comes from. And what makes that difficult is that in between the doing, the activity, the action, the trying to fix things and make things better from the solar perspective, there's this wall or this boundary of either traumas or negative emotions or identification with all kinds of inner feelings. And while we are getting more into the realm of the moon here, that's more the external version of the moon. Just like in yoga practice, there are the yoga is divided up into 8 limbs, and it's said that, for example, the yamas, the niyamas, the asana, the pranayama, even the pratyahara, and so on, and the focus, that's an external form. So even when you're internalized, if you've made it to the point of meditation, and you're using a mantra or you're focusing on something internally, you're still focused on a thing. And so even that is an external experience compared to that pure being, that pure essence that we have. So psychologically, there is this wall of things. And when many people start to rest and allow themselves to just sit there and be, well, all of a sudden, all these things start popping up. All these experiences, these emotions, these dreams, these inner realities, which is still a solar aspect of the inner reality, but we're getting closer to the lunar here. And the reason people don't feel comfortable existing in pure being or existing in that state of contentment is because they are still, even though their eyes are closed and they're sitting still, they're still outwardly engaged in stuff. And since we've just come out of the Kali Yuga, the Dark Ages, in the last 2 centuries, it's hard to let go of that, even on an internal level. And again, that's where the role of proper counseling and then effective meditation comes into play. But to develop the moon from a lunar perspective, from a mystic perspective, is to be able to do whatever it takes to release attachment to the external and to be completely content with what is internal. I mean, really deeply internal. And to also have the ability to know what feels right and what doesn't. Now, we have to, again, ride some different waves here, different levels of waves. Because, for example, in yoga practice, we have the yamas and niyamas, which are like tenets to follow or principles to follow. And for the majority of situations, those principles are going to be applicable all the time. However, those are still external things. And this is where it gets fuzzy, and this is why people have such a hard time with developing the lunar side of their nature. To really embody the lunar is to be able to sense what is appropriate right now in the present moment. What is appropriate right now in the present moment? And sometimes that might go against principles or tenets that you follow most of the time in your outward daily life. And so this is often why solar energy, masculine energy, people who are very involved in the sun aspect of their personality, or even the Martian aspect of their personality, why they have such difficulty with feminine energy, because it's not going to make sense in a logical, outwardly intelligent fashion. As I've been taught, the moon is considered to be all-knowing. So whereas the sun is intelligent, where the sun goes and researches and explores things and makes the best decision on the pieces of information that are provided to it, the moon just knows. The moon is all-knowing. And this is one of the reasons why in the current state of astrology, lunar people tend to be better at astrology. Because while there are numerous formulas and equations and very useful approaches to analyzing a chart, since we're still only in the beginning of the Dwapara Yuga, astrology is actually still developing. We're growing out of Dark Age astrology. And there's many things that the human mind can't quite fully comprehend. And that's why when you get astrologers who are hell-bent on cranking out the calculations and the formulas and ignoring all else, they don't necessarily do the best job, because they're looking only at information and they're not tapping into the lunar side of their experience, which is the all-knowing side, which that's when a person looks at a chart and is automatically drawn to those things which are appropriate to speak to the client in that moment. Because the all-knowing points them towards it. That's a lunar quality. It can't be described, it can't be explained, it is all-knowing. It can be related to a psychic quality, but not quite, because psychic qualities are more tricks, rather than this attunement to universal knowledge or universal consciousness. And many astrologers that you probably know, they probably are approaching astrology from this fashion. They might be intelligent, so that they can go back and reverse engineer and tell you why that made sense. So they've got that solar quality too. But those who give really wonderful readings, and it's almost like they speak directly to the client in that moment, and the client says, "How did you even know that? That's amazing," with no background information and so on. It's because the astrologers are tuning more into this lunar nature of the all-knowingness. That's why it's so hard to do research on astrology. But anyway, we're not going to get into that. That's going off a whole other tangent. So let's go ahead and rewind and go back to this idea of the moon. So the moon is all-knowing. But in order to be all-knowing, you have to be able to trust your heart, to trust yourself. You also, if you are all-knowing, aren't necessarily going to make a judgment on the results of things. Meaning, oftentimes when we think of this idea of being all-knowing, people think that, well, if you're all-knowing, you're not going to make any mistakes. Well, that's true in a way. Excuse me. But the all-knowing power knows that there aren't mistakes. You see the difficulty here? Because you can go and you can speak to an astrologer and they tell you to do something. Yes, this is the proper path. And you go and do it and your life just blows up. You know, your spouse leaves you, your job crashes, and you're thinking, how is that the right thing to do? And all of this went the way it went. Well, when you're looking at it like that, you're coming at it from a solar perspective in regards to the outward is the most important. And when it comes to all-knowing, it is the inner development that is most important. It is when you are with a loved one and they're passing, and rather than being distraught and losing your sense of self in despair and sorrow, yeah, you're going to cry and you're going to have grief because that's natural and that's a very important emotion to express. But deep down inside, there is a sense of, well, this is part of the whole. This is part of life. This is part of the cycle of things. And I, as a little me, can't know why that happened. But the all-knowingness of me recognizes that it's part of a much bigger picture that I can't pin down with my mind, but I feel it as right. Or if a person loses everything, and if they're solar driven and they see as though everything's just been lost, everything they are is gone, well, that's an external expression. But a person who has an all-knowingness might stop and tune within and feel their heart and know that this had to happen. They don't know why, meaning in their intellect. They can't describe it. But they have a sense that what comes next is important for their inner development. And the importance of that inner development is about learning to fully access and embody that inner peace, that contentment, that purity of awareness that the moon is all about. Beyond time, beyond space, beyond circumstance. That when developed, one is always in a place of presence and clarity. And it is kind of a passive place from the external world's perspective. And as we keep going over, that's hard in this day and age, because even the best of us still have some kind of drive about achievement or accomplishment. And the all-knowing lunar qualities of the moon knows that it's going to be all right. Even if things wither and fade away, they are attuned to the infinite spirit. They know it's fine. They know there is an eternity underneath all of this idea of breaking things up into time. So in order to truly develop the moon and to make it healthy, because again, the reason people have such difficulty with the moon is because we make up these negative connotations. I remember seeing a meme somewhere where there was kind of like the silhouette of a beautiful woman and this like silk scarf flowing out behind her. And it said, "I'm not a woman, I'm a storm with skin." And so people glorify that. You know, I'm a powerful, unpredictable storm with skin, as though that is the embodiment of the lunar qualities. And that is an embodiment of some of the lunar qualities, and occasionally that needs to happen. But ultimately, the moon, when it's strong, is peaceful. When it is involved with negative or difficult circumstances, it is not dramatizing it. It is just recognizing that this is part of life happening. When it is involved in peaceful, clear circumstances, it is able to sink more fully into that. So what we're going to find with a lot of these discussions of the planets in this mystical sense is we have almost like a stereotype, which is not true. Like Mars, a strong Mars is a macho, angry, high testosterone individual. Well, that's an imbalanced Mars. The person may be strong, the person may have a lot of testosterone, but they're not aggressive unless they need to be. They're not looking for problems, but they're confident, real confidence, which means they're not looking for problems to prove that they're strong. They know when a problem arises, they'll take care of it. So the rest of the time, they're actually peaceful and calm. With the sun, there are these leadership qualities, these driven qualities, these ability to manage things, to make sure everything is in its right place. And strong versions of the sun, they lead and care for people. Once I was in a musical group, and one of the members she was a self-proclaimed anarchist. And anytime I would try to make a schedule to practice or try to sit down and go over songs in a formulaic fashion, it was ridiculous. It was as if I just set a bomb off, and how I was such driven by the patriarchy and trying to control everything. And I just wanted to I just want to put on a good show. And we kind of have to have this discipline for a little while in order to be free when we're playing during the show. So many people look at solar qualities or masculine qualities of the sun, and they look at control. They look at people taking advantage of others. They look at the kings and queens of today who are essentially just taking from all the poor below them. But that's not the solar qualities. The real solar qualities is strong, and it is controlling, but it won't hurt people that are weaker than it. It's benefic in the sense is it wants to care for and help nurture and grow those that it is responsible for. That is a true quality of the sun. And again, with the moon, another one of those difficulties is a person is emotionally imbalanced, or they just can't control themselves, or they can't be contained or caged, these sorts of things, or they shouldn't be. When there's a reason we have all of the planets, because they are all part of our consciousness. So there is a time for the moon to predominate. There's a time for the sun to predominate. Why do we have a strong sun? So the moon can grow. So the moon can be safe enough and protected enough to grow into its full being, or realize its full being. Why do we have Mars? To take care of the problems that are going to get in the way of that. Why do we have Mercury? To help manage all the little trivial things in our life so we have time to focus within. But the sun and the moon are most important because really all of the other planets are, in a sense, members of the cabinet of the royalty that the sun and moon are about. Moon being the queen, sun being the king, Mercury being the prince, the heir, Jupiter and Venus, the counselors, the advisors, Saturn, the servants, Mars, the general that protects the kingdom. So every facet of our consciousness is important, but from a mystical perspective, in order to put all this together, we have to be able to embody the highest and clearest manifestations of each of these, because when you do that, then they all work well together. Because of modern pop culture and TV shows and the drama that we're addicted to, we have this idea that there needs to be this kind of stress and struggle within ourselves and within our lives. And there is healthy stress and healthy competition, healthy struggle, sure. But the fully realized, unified being who's working through a human body embodies each planet when it is appropriate and knows how to do so. So what to take from this? Well, begin practicing simple being. Simple being. Meaning spend some time just sitting there, not even meditating, not even trying to do a technique or achieve something. Just sit in your chair with your eyes open, gazing at the wall or the door in front of you or at nature, and just see what arises within your consciousness. Become that lunar receptive observational quality, whatever it is. And sometimes it can be somewhat painful, but if you're able to hold your awareness there, it will pass. And then new levels of peace come from that. So spend time daily, just a few minutes, 5 to 10 minutes a day, simply sitting and just feeling the body, observing the mind, feeling the breath, not doing anything other than holding your awareness in an observational place and letting that be what it is. When it comes to how you act in the world, many people, especially individuals who have strong Saturn and Mars on angles or mutual combinations of Saturn and Mars, they think they only are going to feel good if they do something. Well, take some time, and rather than doing something, just sit and think about what's coming into your life or what you're going to do and what doesn't feel right. So what should you say no to? What should you say no to? Practicing that won't power. Do that just a little bit every day and see how it changes your perception of life. But you have to follow up. So you have to use your Mars here too, where you actually become engaged and truly don't do it. And see what happens when you use your won't power, this lunar power, to actually cut the things out of your life or get some distance from them for a little while. Letting them go to see how you feel internally, how you feel inside. This is the best way to begin developing the qualities of the moon. And it's simple, but it takes a lot of attention, especially if you're not used to being in this way. Over the course of months, 6 months to a year, doing this a little bit every day, you will start to be able to tap into these lunar qualities, the qualities of being able to receive, to observe, to know what you don't want. Therefore, the natural peace and contentment can come forth no matter what's going on around you. So consider this as you develop your moon from this perspective of inner mysticism.